I never thought a simple promise to my daughter could turn into something that would upend my entire life. My name is Brandon Ellis, a single dad scraping by in East Portland, Oregon, working odd jobs as a handyman and roofer. This Christmas was tighter than ever. A last-minute canceled contract left me with barely enough to cover rent, let alone gifts. But I'd sworn to Nora, my 8-year-old, that we'd have a magical night. So on December 24th, I splurged on tickets to Winterland Park, the place lit up like a dream with twinkling lights and holiday cheer. The cold air nipped at our cheeks as Nora tugged my hand, her eyes wide under the glow of strung bulbs. "Daddy, the carousel, hurry!" she squealed, pulling me through the crowd. We dodged families bundled in coats, the scent of hot cocoa and pine filling the air. But just as we neared the spinning horses, something small crashed into my leg. A little girl, no more than 5, in a fluffy white coat dusted with snow. She crumpled to the ground, sobbing, her tiny body shaking. "Nora, wait," I said, kneeling down. The girl looked up with tear-streaked cheeks. "Hey, kiddo, you okay? What's your name?" "Olive," she whimpered. I lost my mommy. She said stay put, but I followed the reindeer lights, and now she's gone." My heart clenched. I'd lost Nora once in a store for 5 minutes, and it nearly broke me. This poor kid alone in the holiday chaos. I had to help her. Little did I know picking her up would set off a chain of events that would change everything. Somewhere in that glittering park, her mother was frantic, and when she found us, she'd see me not as a helper, but as a threat. As I held Olive close, her small frame still trembling against my chest, I couldn't help but think about how this night was supposed to be just for Nora and me. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, especially when you're already hanging on by a thread. My name's Brandon Ellis, and I'm 38. Scraping together a living in East Portland, Oregon as a handyman, mostly roofing jobs and odd construction gigs, and it's not glamorous. My hands are calloused from hauling shingles up ladders in the rain, and my back aches more days than not. We live in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of the neighborhood where the walls are thin and the heat doesn't always kick in. It's just me and Nora now, ever since her mom, Sarah, passed 4 years ago from breast cancer. That battle drained everything savings, energy, hope. Sarah fought like hell, but in the end, it was just us, left me trying to fill shoes that felt way too big. I never imagined I'd be raising a daughter alone. Before Sarah got sick, life was steady. I had a decent job at a small construction firm. We rented a little house with a yard where Nora could play. But medical bills piled up like snowdrifts, and after Sarah was gone, I quit the firm to take flexible work so I could be there for Nora's school runs and doctor's appointments. She's 8 now, with her mom's curly brown hair and a smile that lights up even the gloomiest Oregon winter. Nora's my everything. The reason I push through 12-hour days on freezing rooftops or patching leaks in strangers' homes. She draws pictures for me, stick figure families under rainbows, and tapes them to the fridge. "For you, Daddy," she'll say, and it makes the exhaustion worth it. This Christmas hit harder than usual. I'd lined up a big roofing contract for a fancy condo complex downtown, enough to cover gifts, maybe even a small tree with lights. But the client backed out at the last minute, citing some budget cut. I was left with scraps, barely enough for rent and groceries. Still, I'd promised Nora a special night. "Daddy, can we go to Winterland Park, the one with the magic carousel, say?" "Sasatig." She'd begged, her eyes sparkling like the holiday ads on TV. How could I say no? I scraped together the ticket money from my emergency jar, telling myself it was an investment in her happiness. December 24th rolled around, and we bundled up in our worn coats, the air crisp with the promise of snow. The park was a wonderland, strings of lights draped like icicles over trees, the scent of cinnamon roasted nuts wafting through the crowd, carols playing softly in the background. Nora's face lit up as we entered, her mittened hand in mine, and for a moment I forgot about the empty wallet in my pocket. We weaved through families, laughing and snapping photos, heading straight for the carousel with its painted horses and twinkling mirrors. That's when it happened. Olive barreled into my leg, a tiny bundle of fear and fluff. Her sobs cut through the festive noise like a knife. I knelt down, Nora hovering beside me, her eyes wide with concern. "Daddy, she's lost," Nora whispered. Olive's story tumbled out in hiccups, chasing reindeer lights, Mom vanishing in the crowd. No phone number, just, "Mommy's name is Bree and she does big work." My gut twisted. I knew that panic all too well from the time Nora wandered off in a grocery store, 5 endless minutes until I found her by the candy aisle. I couldn't leave this kid alone. So I scooped her up, her little arms wrapping around my neck, and grabbed Nora's hand. "We'll find your mom, okay?" I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. As we pushed toward the security booth through the throng of holiday revelers, I felt the weight of being a dad, not just to my girl, but in that moment to this stranger's child, too. Little did I know this act of kindness was about to pull me into a world far removed from my own. With Olive in my arms and Nora's hand firmly in mine, we pushed through the holiday crowd toward the security booth near the park's entrance. The lights overhead blurred into streaks as people jostled around us, families with strollers, couples sipping mulled wine, kids waving glow sticks like tiny swords. The air was thick with laughter and carols, but it all felt distant, muffled by the little girl's sobs against my shoulder. Her coat was soft, still carrying the faint scent of chocolate from whatever treat she'd had earlier. "It's okay, Olive," I murmured, rubbing her back the way I did with Nora during thunderstorms. "We'll find your mom, I promise." Nora trotted beside me, her eyes big and serious. "Daddy, is she gonna be all right? She looks so scared." At 8, Nora had that mix of innocence and empathy that always tugged at my heart. She'd been through enough with losing her mom to know what fear looked like. "Yeah, sweetie," I replied, squeezing her hand. "We're going to make sure she gets home safe." The security booth was a small hut decked out in fake snow and twinkling garlands, but inside it was all business. A couple of guards in neon vests were scribbling on clipboards, radios crackling with reports of lost mittens and wandering toddlers. The list of missing kids was already long: names, ages, descriptions taped to the wall like a sad holiday card. I set Olive down gently and explained the situation to the nearest guard, a burly guy with a Santa hat perched awkwardly on his head. "Found her by the carousel. Says her name's Olive Mom's Bree. No phone number, though." He nodded, jotting it down. "All right, we'll put out a call on the speakers and radios. No matching reports yet, but moms usually show up quick. Best bet, stick around a visible spot like the big tree or the carousel entrance. We'll ping you if we hear anything." He handed me a slip with a reference number like we were checking a coat. I thanked him, but inside a knot tightened in my gut. What if her mom didn't find us? What if this dragged on all night? I glanced at Nora, who was already whispering to Olive, trying to distract her with tales of flying reindeer. We headed back toward the carousel, the spinning lights casting merry shadows on the snow-dusted ground. The music swelled, jingle bells, on repeat, and I hoisted Olive onto my shoulders again, her little legs dangling over my coat. "There you go, kiddo. Now you can see over everyone. I spot your mom yet." She gripped my hair like reins, her tears drying as she scanned the crowd. "Not yet. But look, the horses are so pretty." For a moment her voice lit up, and she pointed at the gilded carousel animals bobbing up and down. It reminded me of Nora at that age, wide-eyed at everything magical. I chuckled softly, feeling a strange warmth, despite the cold biting through my gloves. Nora tugged at my sleeve. Daddy tell her the story about the magic pony that grants wishes. So I did, spinning a silly tale while we waited, the three of us forming this impromptu huddle amid the chaos. Olive giggled, her small hands relaxing in my hair, and Nora beamed like she'd just made a new best friend. Time stretched 10 minutes, 20, the crowd swirling around us like a holiday blizzard. My arms ached from holding Olive steady, but I didn't mind. Being a dad means you push through the discomfort. It's what I did every day for Nora, patching roofs in the rain or skipping meals to buy her school supplies. This felt like an extension of that protecting a kid who needed it, no questions asked. But as the minutes ticked by, doubt crept in. What if her mom thought the worst? What if someone saw me, a scruffy guy in work boots with a fancy-dressed little girl on his shoulders? Portland's a safe place, but people jump to conclusions. I scanned the faces around us happy families, none looking frantic. The wind picked up, carrying flakes of snow that stung my cheeks. Nora shivered, and I wrapped my scarf around her neck. "You cold, sweetie." She shook her head, but I could tell she was getting tired. Olive, though, had warmed up literally and figuratively. She chattered about her favorite reindeer, Rudolph, and how her mom always made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. It broke my heart a little. She was so trusting, so small in this big, noisy world. Then suddenly a woman burst through the crowd like a storm. She was in her mid-30s, sharp features framed by dark hair whipping in the wind, her coat unbuttoned as if she'd been running. Her eyes locked on Olive, wild with panic. "Olive! Oh my God, Olive!" she cried, shoving past a group of carolers. Before I could react, she reached up and yanked Olive off my shoulders, clutching her like a lifeline. Olive squealed in surprise, then burst into fresh tears. "Mommy!" The woman Bree, I assumed, spun on me, her face twisted in fury and fear. "Who the hell are you? What did you do to my daughter?" Her voice was sharp, accusatory, cutting through the music like a knife. I stepped back, hands raised instinctively. Nora ducked behind my leg, her small fingers digging into my jeans. "Whoa, easy," I said, keeping my tone calm even as my pulse raced. "I'm Brandon. I found her crying by the carousel. She said she was lost, so I took her to security. We've been waiting here so you could spot her easier." Bree hugged Olive tighter, checking her over as if expecting bruises. "Lost you just picked her up. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? You could be anyone." Her eyes narrowed, taking in my faded jacket, the paint stains on my boots. I felt the judgment like a slap, the way people sometimes look at me when I'm hauling tools through nicer neighborhoods like I'm out of place. "Look, ma'am," I replied, fighting to stay steady. "I didn't touch her except to help. Ask the guards, they have our info. I just didn't want her wandering alone in this crowd." Olive wriggled in her mom's arms, reaching back toward me. "Mommy, he's nice. He told stories and put me on his shoulders so I could see you." But Bree wasn't listening. Her face was flushed, tears mixing with anger. "Nice you think that's enough. People like you." She stopped short, biting her lip. But the implication hung there. People like me, working class, rough around the edges, not to be trusted with a kid in a fancy coat. It stung more than the cold. I'd been called worse on job sites, but this... In front of Nora, I glanced down at my daughter. Her eyes wide and scared, and a wave of protectiveness surged through me. "Listen," I said, my voice firmer now. "I'm a dad, too. This is my girl, Nora. If she were lost, I'd pray someone did the same for her. We reported it, waited visible, that's all." Bree finally looked at Nora, really looked, the way she clung to me, mirroring how Olive clung to her. Something shifted in her expression, the fury cracking like ice underfoot. She exhaled shakily, brushing snow from Olive's hair. I'm sorry, I was terrified. She slipped away while I was buying tickets. One second, she was there the next." Her voice broke, and she set Olive down, kneeling to hug her properly. I nodded, the tension easing a bit. "I get it, scariest feeling in the world." Olive tugged her mom's sleeve. "Mommy, can we say thank you? And meet Nora. She's my new friend." Bree stood wiping her eyes and managed a weak smile. "Yes, sweetie, of course." She turned to me. "Thank you, really, I overreacted. Let me at least buy you and your daughter some hot chocolate or something. There's a stand nearby." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just head home, shake off the awkwardness. But Nora's eyes lit up at the mention of cocoa, and Olive was already holding her hand. "Sure," I said finally. "That'd be nice." We walked to a nearby vendor, the girls chattering ahead. Bree ordered 4 steaming cups, handing one to me with a tentative glance. "I'm Bree, by the way, Bree Kingsley." I introduced myself and Nora, properly sipping the warm drink as the carousel music swirled around us. She asked a few questions: how we found Olive, what stories I told, and I kept it light, not mentioning my own struggles. Bree seemed relieved, even grateful, but there was something guarded about her, like she was used to keeping walls up. As we finished, she pulled out her wallet. "Here, let me give you something for your trouble. Or at least cab fare home." I shook my head. "No need. Really. Just glad she's safe." She paused, eyeing me curiously, like that was the last thing she expected. "Most people would... Never mind. Thank you again, Brandon." We said goodbyes, the girls, hugging like old pals. As Nora and I walked away, the park lights fading behind us, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and warmth. Little did I know Bree wasn't just any mom. She was someone whose world was miles from mine, and our paths weren't done crossing yet. A week dragged by after that chaotic Christmas Eve at Winterland Park, and I'd almost convinced myself it was just a strange blip in an otherwise ordinary life. The holiday had come and gone. Quietly for Nora and me, a small tree with handmade ornaments, pancakes for breakfast, and her favorite cartoon marathon. I'd scraped together enough for a new doll she'd been eyeing, and her squeal of joy made the scrimping worth it. But money was still tight. I picked up a few roofing patches in the post-holiday slush, my hands raw from the cold and tar. East Portland winters bite hard, and with bills stacking up, I was back to counting every penny. Then my phone buzzed one gray afternoon while I was up on a ladder replacing shingles on a leaky garage. I nearly ignored it, but something made me check. An unknown number. "This is Bree Kingsley, Olive's mom. I'd like to meet you and Nora again to thank you properly. Coffee this Saturday, West Side Cafe, 10 a.m. I stared at the screen, the wind whipping around me. Thank me properly. We'd already done the hot chocolate bit. Part of me wanted to politely decline. What did a guy like me have in common with a woman who'd looked at me like a potential kidnapper? But Nora overheard me muttering about it that night over dinner. "Olive's mom. Can we go, Daddy? Please, Olive's my friend now." Her eyes sparkled, and I couldn't say no. Nora had talked nonstop about the little girl with the fluffy coat and the reindeer stories, so I texted back, "Sure, we'll be there." Saturday morning, I bundled Nora into her best sweater, the one with the sparkly snowflakes, and we took the bus across town to West Side. The cafe was cozy, tucked in a trendy neighborhood with exposed brick walls and the smell of fresh espresso. We arrived early, Nora fidgeting with excitement. Bree showed up right on time, but she looked different. No frantic energy, no high heels. Clicking like accusations, she wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Olive skipped in beside her, spotting Nora, and rushing over with a hug like they'd been apart for years, not days. "Brandon," Bree said, extending a hand with a warm smile. "Thanks for coming. And hi again. Nora Olive hasn't stopped talking about you." We ordered coffees, mine black, hers a latte, and the girls claimed a corner table, giggling over coloring books Bree had brought. I sat across from her, feeling a bit out of place in my faded flannel shirt, but she didn't seem to notice. We chatted lightly at first about the park, how Olive had bounced back like nothing happened. "She slept with her reindeer plush that night," Bree said, laughing softly. "Kept saying the nice man with the stories saved her." I shrugged it off. "Just did what anyone would." But Bree leaned in, her expression turning serious. "No, not anyone. I overreacted that night badly. I was terrified, and I took it out on you. But what you did, keeping her safe, not making a scene, not even knowing who I was, it hit me hard." I sipped my coffee, unsure where this was going. "Who you are," I echoed. She nodded, glancing at the girls to make sure they were occupied. "I'm Bree Kingsley, CEO of Kingsley Biotech. We develop cell therapy tech, big stuff, and pharmaceuticals. Boardrooms, investors, the works. In my world, people approach me for favors, connections, headlines, but you helped Olive without a second thought. No photos, no demands. It made me realize how jaded I've become. I blinked, processing. Kingsley Biotech, I'd seen the name in the news, some cutting-edge company worth billions. Suddenly, her polished panic at the park made sense. Wow, I had no idea, but honestly, I wasn't thinking about any of that. She was just a scared kid like Nora could have been. Bree's eyes softened. That's exactly why I'm here. Not just to apologize, though I owe you that. I run a foundation alongside the company philanthropy arm for community projects. We're building a new center in Northgate, after-school programs, health clinics, job training. But our lead civil engineer bailed last month, family emergency. We need someone reliable for oversight, someone who gets the ground level, not just blueprints. I set my cup down, a knot forming in my stomach. Me, Bree, I'm flattered, but I'm no engineer. I learned the trade hands-on, roofing basic construction. No degree, no fancy resume. She waved that off. I don't hire resumes, I hire people. I've checked around. Your old boss at the firm spoke highly of you, said you're meticulous, honest, and you get jobs done right. This isn't charity or payback. It's because I trust you after what I saw. The pay's good, steady hours, benefits. Think about Nora. She deserves that stability. My mind raced. Steady work. Benefits. It sounded like a dream after years of gig-to-gig hustling, patching leaks in the rain while worrying about Nora's next doctor's visit. But doubt crept in. What if I screwed it up? What if I wasn't cut out for a big project like that? I glanced at Nora, laughing as she and Olive traded crayons. She caught my eye and grinned, waving a half-colored reindeer. Daddy, look. It's for you, Bree noticed. She's amazing. And she'd be proud of you taking this step. I rubbed my chin, the weight of it all pressing down. I don't know. It's a big change. What if I'm not enough? You're already enough, Bree said quietly. You proved that at the park. Just think it over, but not too long. We break ground in February. Nora tugged my sleeve then. Daddy, Olive says her mom builds stuff to help people, like you fix roofs. The girls beamed, and in that moment something clicked. For Nora, for the future, I wanted to give her maybe this was the chance I'd been scraping by without. All right, I said, finally meeting Bree's gaze. I'll do it. Not for the title, but because it feels right. Bree's smile widened, genuine and relieved. You won't regret it. Welcome aboard, Brandon. We shook hands, and as the girls cheered, I felt a spark, not just of opportunity, but of connection. Bree's world was light years from mine, but in her eyes there was understanding, a shared quiet strength from raising kids alone. As we wrapped up promising play dates for the girls, I walked out into the crisp air with Nora skipping beside me. For the first time in years, the path ahead didn't feel so uncertain. A year had flown by since that coffee shop meeting, and looking back, it felt like a lifetime crammed into 12 months. I'd taken Bree up on her offer, stepping into the role of site supervisor for the Northgate Community Center project. It wasn't some cushy desk job. I was still out in the elements, overseeing crews, checking blueprints against the real-world mess of construction, but it was steady, regular paychecks that covered the bills without me having to juggle 3 gigs health insurance that meant Nora's checkups weren't a gamble, and weekends mostly free. We stayed in our old apartment, the one with the creaky floors and the view of the neighbor's overgrown yard. I liked the familiarity. It kept me grounded. Every morning, I'd wake Nora with pancakes if time allowed, pack her lunch and drop her off at school on my way to the site. She'd wave from the playground, her backpack bouncing, and I'd drive off feeling like I was finally getting this dad thing right. The center itself was coming together beautifully, a hub for after-school programs, a small clinic for low-income families, even job training workshops. Bree's foundation poured money into it, but I made sure it was built solid, no corners cut. I'd catch her stopping by on weekends, clipboard in hand, chatting with the workers or touring the progress. Olive was often with her, and the minute she spotted Nora, who I'd started bringing along on non-school days, the two would dash off to help. by drawing chalk blueprints on the sidewalk or stacking spare bricks into forts. Those girls had bonded like sisters from that first chaotic night at the park. Nora taught Olive how to make friendship bracelets, and Olive shared her endless supply of glitter stickers. Watching them laugh together, I felt a swell of something I hadn't in years, contentment maybe, or just plain gratitude. Bree and I, that grew quietly without fanfare. It started with project updates over coffee, then stretched into longer talks about life. She opened up about her world, the high-stakes boardrooms at Kingsley Biotech, the loneliness of being a single mom in a sea of suits who saw her as a title first person second. Her husband had left when Olive was a toddler chasing some startup dream that fizzled out. "I built walls," she'd say, stirring her latte. "Thought it kept us safe." I shared my own scars, Sarah's illness, the endless hospital vigils, the void after she was gone. No dramatic confessions, just honest conversations that made the days feel less heavy. One evening after a site walkthrough, she lingered as the sun dipped low. "You know, Brandon, that night at the park, you didn't just find Olive, you reminded me there's good out there, no strings attached." I met her eyes, and something shifted, a spark that had been simmering. We didn't rush. It unfolded naturally, like the seasons changing in Portland's misty air. A shared dinner here, a park outing with the girls there. No labels, just two people who'd been through the ringer finding solace in each other. By the time the next Christmas rolled around and the center was ready for its grand opening, we'd finished ahead of schedule the ribbon-cutting, drawing, local news crews, and a crowd of neighbors. I stood off to the side in my best button-down, watching Bree give a short speech about community and second chances. She caught my eye, mid-sentence, smiling in a way that made my chest tighten. Afterward, as the guests milled about with punch and cookies, she pulled me aside. "Couldn't have done this without you," she whispered. But the real magic came that evening when we all gathered at her place, a cozy house in the hills far from my apartment, but feeling more like home each time we visited. The living room glowed with string lights, a massive tree in the corner adorned with ornaments the girls had picked. Nora and Olive had insisted on 2 paper stars at the top, one labeled Nora in wobbly crayon, the other Olive. The air smelled of roasting turkey and apple pie. Bree's attempt at a homemade feast that turned out better than she'd feared. We sat around the table, Minora, Bree, and Olive plates piled high. The girls chattered about their wish lists, debating if Santa preferred chocolate chip or oatmeal cookies. Bree raised her glass of sparkling cider, her eyes shining. "To new beginnings," she said, looking right at me. "And to the man who didn't just save my daughter that night, but helped me find myself again." I clinked glasses, my throat tight. "To family," I added softly. Nora beamed, reaching across to high-five Olive. As we ate, laughter filling the room, I watched the scene unfold like a dream I never thought I'd have. Nora's giggles mixing with Olive's, Bree's hand brushing mine under the table. A quiet reassurance. Later, after the girls tore into presents, a new bike for Nora, a dollhouse for Olive, we bundled up and stepped outside. Snow flurry gently blanketing the yard in white. The girls built the lopsided snowman, their cheeks rosy, while Bree and I stood on the porch, arms around each other. "You know," I said, pulling her close, "last Christmas I thought we were just scraping by. Now, this." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Sometimes getting lost leads you right where you're meant to be." I nodded, thinking back to that frantic night at the park, the crash into my leg, the sobs, the accusations that melted into gratitude. One small act, helping a scared kid, had snowballed into this stability for Nora purpose in my work and a connection with Bree that filled the empty spaces Sarah's loss had left. Not replacing her, but healing around the edges. As the girls called us over to admire their creation, I felt it deep down. Life doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs moments like these, warmth in the cold light, in the dark, people who see you for who you are. And if you'd told me a year ago that a bump from a lost little girl by a carousel would rewrite my story, I'd have laughed. But here we were, proof that sometimes wandering off the path brings you home. Do you believe a single detour can change everything?